I'm Brian Lilly, dragging the truth out of this state broadcaster. That is the topic of tonight's byline. The Ghomeshi saga went from a media smear campaign to a criminal investigation on the weekend. Toronto police say they are now investigating assault claims against Ghomeshi.
As of today's date, 3 people have contacted us, providing us information that they have been victimized relating to these allegations. The Toronto Police Service Sex Crimes has now commenced an active investigation into these allegations.
It's important to remember, though, that the former CBC poster boy is really facing 2 sets of accusations. Firstly, the assault claims that he would woo dates and then beat them with closed fists or choke them.
He grabbed my hair again, but even harder, threw me in front of him on the ground, and started closed fist pounding me in the head repeatedly until my ears were ringing. And I started to cry.
Now, those are truly disturbing allegations, and Toronto police are asking anyone with more information on other assaults to come forward. Well, then there are the other allegations, the ones involving the workplace. And perhaps if those had been dealt with, there would be fewer women able to come forward with the allegations of assault. Well, while the allegations of assault have not been proven in court, we do know that Ghomeshi used his position and his stature at CBC to meet women. He used events he went to as the host of his show Q as a way to find young, starstruck women. Now, if the allegations of inappropriate conduct, gropey hands, sexual harassment in the office were listened to, maybe Ghomeshi would have had a harder time meeting these other women. Who's going to be starstruck by meeting a former member of a mediocre Canadian band that had one hit more than 20 years earlier? Not many. But it doesn't look like CBC did treat this seriously. One of the women who alleged sexual harassment at work said she complained, and she told the National Post that this was the response. The executive producer's comment to me was, he's never going to change. You're a malleable person. Let's talk about how you can make this a less toxic work environment for you. So what kind of sexual harassment are we talking about? Well, lewd comments for sure, grabbing her from behind. And then, according to Roberto Veri, another former Q producer that worked at the same time as this still anonymous woman, there was this incident between Ghomeshi and the former female staffer.
He went up behind her. She was leaning over her desk between the corridor of the executive producer's office and her desk.
Yeah.
So she was leaned over contrary to where she sat.
Yeah.
Okay. And she's bending over, working on some papers, and he came up behind her, grabbed her by the waist, and humped her like 4 or 5 times. Like he drove his pelvis into her buttocks.
That was Veri appearing on the Canada Land podcast with Jesse Brown. Brown is an independent journalist, a media critic who has appeared on Sun News Network in the past and who worked with Kevin Donovan of the Toronto Star to break the Ghomeshi story. Now, grinding, or as Veri put it, humping a female staff member in front of others is pretty shocking. What's the reaction of CBC management? Still trying to deny there is a problem or that they ever knew. Christine Stewart used to be in charge of all shows on English radio and television. She left CBC in April 2013 to join Twitter Canada. But asked about all of this through the social networking site, she said she didn't know a thing. Responding to someone, she said, reading it along with everyone else for the first time. Stunned. Horrible. I'm not sure I buy that, given how everyone seems to have heard something about Ghomeshi. I had heard about problems with him here in Ottawa. I had chased a story on this, but had trouble getting people to come forward and speak on the record. Veri says everyone at CBC's Toronto headquarters must have known.
Listen, you can't work in a building like that. If there are rumors, nobody didn't know.
Yeah.
Everybody knew. Up to the top office.
Which brings me back to last week when I pointed out that I had raised questions about sexual harassment at CBC in January 2013, an access to information request for CBC to provide copies of all documents, including emails, complaints, memos, internal reports regarding reports of harassment or inappropriate behavior involving CBC employees since January 1st, 2010. Please limit the search to the Toronto and Ottawa operations of CBC. Well, that would include the Q production offices. CBC returned 1,454 pages of correspondence and reports, almost all of it redacted. They white it out these days. They don't black it out because that gives good visuals for TV. No, we mostly got blank page after blank page. And then there was this. Too many cases, and I'm getting them mixed up in my mind, wrote an undisclosed employee to a CBC HR manager. Too many cases. Think about that. Too many cases. Getting them mixed up in my mind. That sounds like a problem, but no, not to CBC head honcho Hubert Lacroix, who attacked me at the Commons Status of Women Committee.
We provided this information. There's a copy right here in front of me. 1,454 pages, mostly emails between human resources staff working to resolve human resources issues. Most of those details are blacked out because they are personal information. That's the law. Québec's Brian Lilly used that as an excuse for speculation and innuendo.
CBC style, forget the problem, shoot the messenger. What was my speculation? It was to suggest that given what CBC itself was reporting about the RCMP and what had happened with Jimmy Savile at the BBC, maybe asking questions about the 1,400 pages of problems at just 2 offices in a short time period was appropriate, even if CBC didn't like it. Now, I suggested on Friday's show that Lacroix owes me an apology, but more importantly, he owes Canadian women an apology. I was sharing the video of this on Twitter Sunday night, and CBC's Senior Director of Government Relations started firing back on Twitter. Once again, remember, shoot the messenger and forget about the problem. He was shooting back at the idea that his boss, Hubert Lacroix, owed anyone an apology. Here's what Sean Poulter said. At Brian Lilly, yes, here you go again. Pages when you know there were 3 complaints of sexual harassment on file. Another tweet, 3 complaints filed, as you well know. As I said to Poulter online, maybe CBC only had 3 complaints because managers wouldn't document the complaints, wouldn't take them seriously, and instead asked employees what they could do to change everything, make the workplace less toxic. And there's that habit again. Shoot the messenger, deny, and cover up. Both CBC and the union now say they have no record of this Q producer coming forward, something Very says he can actually prove happened.
The union saying that they have no record of her complaining about this, and I have evidence to the contrary.
Okay, well, I witnessed it.
Yeah.
This is the only reason I'm wading into this matter is because I love that person.
CBC is in big trouble, folks. They have a problem. They're refusing to admit it. The women that have come forward so far are not the only ones with stories of harassment at CBC. They're not the only ones to say top talent was protected, and they're not the only ones to say management didn't take complaints seriously. Lacroix has to stop shooting the messengers. He has to come clean, or he has to resign. And that's the byline.
We are requesting the public to come forward with any video, photograph, social media chats relating to this investigation to contact sex crimes immediately. The Toronto Police Service is committed to investigating this matter fully, as we would any other matter involving this type of investigation.
Tonight's top story, Toronto police are now investigating the allegations of physical and sexual assault against former CBC radio host Jian Ghomeshi. Police say they're also looking into the possibility of a graphic video in the CBC's possession. The state broadcaster has been accused of covering up for its star, not taking past complaints against Ghomeshi seriously. The Sun News contributor Simon Kent is in London, joins us now for a look at how the BBC handled accusations against his star, who faced similar allegations. Simon, I can't help but be drawn to the Jimmy Savile comparison. They are different. One is, the allegation is preying on young women in their 20s. Savile, it was children, pubescent teens, and the like. So different in that respect, but similar in that people knew. People talked about it at BBC for years, didn't they?
Yes, they did indeed, and they're different but exactly the same, where men in positions of power can exert their power, and it's the gravitational pull of celebrity that let them get away with it. The BBC seems to have known for years, maybe 15, perhaps 20 years, what Jimmy Savile was doing, what he was getting away with, and who was enabling him. But they were too scared to blow the whistle on their own star talent. They were too enfeebled by the fact that they were so dependent on the ratings he could bring in, the star power of his name, and what he could could deliver. And Jimmy Savile, in the end, sparked a huge police operation called Operation U-Tree that's ongoing today. And when I look at the CBC and how it's coping at the moment with Jean Ghomeshi and all the accusations around him, I look back at the BBC and how they dealt with their major crisis. I see so much the same. It's frightening.
Well, CBC still saying, oh, look, we didn't know. I want to read from a posting a young woman made online. This is a CBC employee who went to work on cue, and she got back to the office, and this is how she opens her post. So did Jean Ghomeshi try to sleep with you? This was the first question the then director of current affairs for CBC Radio in my hometown asked me the first day I got back from a 6-week unpaid internship at Q. And on top of that, you've got journalism schools. Toronto Star story today. Journalism schools saying they have blacklisted Q as a place for their interns to go over concerns. This has to be telling that more people knew, just like at BBC.
More people knew, and they're the people hiding under their desks last night or sending you late-night emails and texts and Twitter on Sunday night. I mean, this is crazy stuff. People have got to stand up and take some responsibility if you went on there. And don't forget, no matter what people say at the CBC or the people speaking in favour of Jean Ghomeshi, the victims here are those young girls, the interns, the young ladies, the young women who might have had their lives ruined forever because of this, because they're going to have to go out into the open now to follow these through if there is criminal matters proceeding, and we don't know that yet until charges are laid. But these are the real victims here. These are the young women of Canada who have been through all this, but now, God bless them, they're strong enough and they're going to be standing up and they're going to be counted to make sure this sort of cancer doesn't happen again. The CBC has got a huge job ahead of it now to pull itself back together and deliver some sort of credible front to the public.
All right, Simon, we've got about 30 seconds left. I want to ask you this. CBC spends an awful lot of time lecturing the rest of us on how we should live our lives, including taking people to task, other organizations on sexual harassment. Was the BBC much the same while turning a blind eye to its own shortcomings?
Yeah, the BBC tried to ignore it away, and in the end it couldn't ignore it away and it had to act. I think the CBC at the moment now would be best advised to stick to its own knitting and just get itself in order before it lectures anyone. And don't forget, it's lecturing people on the taxpayers' dollar. And they should be hugely embarrassed by this, and they should be hugely ashamed in equal measure.
All right, Simon, great talking to you, and thanks for bringing us the insight.